Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. It's just spelled B-R-A-N-T, Hunt, H-U-T. The channel is simply called Discerning What is True. I'm still going through a particular book tonight called Kabbalah and Exodus. The gentleman who wrote this book has written many books. He is no longer living. He was a Kabbalist. This is one of the books that he wrote. Well, I shouldn't say he did write. He wrote it, but it's been has many photos here. If I can get them here, let's see if I can find. There's always a different, what I would call different images, revealing different things, especially in the Jewish faith. But it's not necessarily Jewish, as we would say, as what they believe. This is a different particular perspective. Let's see if I can get it over here. That's just the tree we were talking about. It's not the tree of good and evil. It's the tree of life. Let's see. Phil Langdon's helped me to look at things that I normally would miss. This book was bought. It's hard to believe this is back in 2024. This is a small book called Metaphysic Bible Dictionary. It's an interpretation of the symbolic meanings of scripture names. And it does. I bet you their pastor won't tell you that because, in fact, they would think that Kabbalist is into what I would call Satan worship. No, it's not that. Yeah, it's not anywhere close to that. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling here, so I don't want to ramble all night. So welcome. And so I'm going to begin to read here from this particular book, chapter 15. So just bear with me as I get to the right section of the book. It is entitled Regrets. Before that is a section which is to do with rebellion and rules. This is a section called Rebellion and Rules. The section before this was to deal with Joseph and all those that went to Egypt to feed themselves. But it's not a literal interpretation, as we've been told. It's another way of sharing a truth, but only for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. So again, this is chapter 15, Regrets, Exodus chapter 15 and 16. Today I was actually was listening to a broadcast. It was really kind of interesting because it kind of prepped me. It was on a Christian radio station, and it was a guy reading the scriptures, and he's actually reading Exodus. And when he gave certain names and the names of the people who were involved, and I said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." So I immediately started looking at this particular book, Jeff Farrell, all these names that today are not what I call popular, very different, in fact. But anyway, I'm rambling again, so let's get to it. So it's good. So thank you. At last, such a moment of triumph and ecstasy has to pass as ordinary conditions begin to assert themselves again. This is shown in the events immediately after the crossing of the Red Sea, when Moses led the Israelites into the wilderness of Shur, S-H-U-R, which means to go round about, and also the enemy, end quote, and lying in wait, end quote. It was here that the full implication of leaving Egypt began to dawn. So in other words, the celebration, we're now free, such and such, and everything's going really, everything's hunky-dory, feeling okay. And then suddenly we're out here in the middle of the wilderness, and do we bring any food here, guys, or something of that nature? again, that would be in a literal term, so to speak. But this is a little bit more deeper. So let's get into it. Exodus 15:22 says, quote, and they went 3 days in the wilderness. Okay, well, the 3 days is key. The wilderness, what is the wilderness? And found no water. Well, that's a big deal. That time period. Now, it's not what you think it is here. It's not. This is all spiritual implications. It's not them going into the area of pursuing now. They're going back to what we call the promised land, that type of thing. The promised land is revealing what I would call the spiritual implications of what will happen. In other words, this is a deeper thoughts here. This is not a literal interpretation. This is not a historical interpretation, you see. So when they came to a place called Moriah, it's not Moriah, M-A-R-A-H. I'm just kind of curious since that's the word to come up. So let's just see what that word means in this particular deal. It may not be in here. I just always put that up front. So that is, I'll make sure I got the right spelling. M-A-R-A-H. Yes. Based upon Exodus chapter 15:23. You want to guess what the word means, guys? In Hebrew, it means bitterness. Hard lessons. Okay. So this is again, this is spiritual implications, not physical deal, which is what your everyday pastor preaches. It's not a physical deal here. This is spiritual, first of bitterness. Like suddenly they became bitter. And what it said, he even says it here in the here, Samah means bitter. Quote, and the people murmur against Moses, end quote. The reason for this was not just the taste of the waters. The oral tradition tells us but that when the Israelites saw the destruction of the Egyptians, many of them, believing it now safe to return, wished to resume their old life. So the implication here simply is they want to go back already. But this is not, Egypt represents the flesh. It has nothing to do with the spiritual implications, so to speak. It has nothing to do with your head, what can happen there and the transformation that takes place there, you see. When people have the event somewhat in their lives. Phil Langdon's had that event. I don't know if anyone else has had that event. He's a very good teacher. This condition occurs because it is believed by the uneducated psyche that it is possible to return to old habits with complete immunity. The words say, already, let's get back to what we were doing, our habits, you see. Now that the body's will has been broken. Moreover, biblical legend tells us the sea had cast up much treasure of the drowned Egyptians, and because of this, many Israelites could not bring themselves to leave the seashore. So there's that. There's this physical act. This is the physical. Going back to the physical, not spiritual here. It's like the illustration of the parable when the seed is falls out on bad ground, dusty ground, dry land, dry ground, such and such, and it doesn't take root. Okay, it doesn't change, you see, unless it's put in good soil, you see. And that doesn't happen by accident, you see. Okay. Moreover, biblical legend tells us the sea had cast up, that's what I said, sorry. They were still held by the baubles, B-A-U-B-L-E, of the lower worlds. It was only by Moses reminding them that it was by God's grace they were free and safe. So he's already illustrating here the lower world. The higher world, if you understand, there are four aspects of your body. In a way, it's also part of the elements. The earth is one of them. The next one is fire. The next one is water. And the last one is air, which is air meaning up here, the top part. This is where heaven is. That's where it's at. Heaven is up here in your head. It's not in a place that you go to, as the implications of those who believe in a traditional literal interpretation. It was only by Moses reminding them that it was by God's grace they were free and safe, that he succeeded in persuading them away from the sea and into the desert. Kabbalastically, that is, Moriah, and the wilderness of Shur, SHUR, represent the realization that on the spiritual journey, one can no longer depend upon the support of the physical world. Interesting. So you don't have your feet are not on physical ground, so to speak. You see, I want to see what this word says here, SHUR, if it's in here. Also, I'd like to do this just to make sure. Again, bear with me. Yes, the word SHUR, a wall or that beholds. Okay, the realization of good. And it has another word here, Shasham, or Susa, Hebrew, meaning lily. We won't go there. I've done the wrong thing here, got there, but that's what it means. Simply a wall or that beholds. In other words, they kind of run into a wall here, if I understand it correctly. I might be wrong about that. It represents the realization that of the spiritual journey, one can no longer depend upon the support of the physical world. Gone are the myriad props and entertainments that keep the body lulled and the psyche ensnared. Isn't that about our own life? How we get caught up in the entertainment in our lives. I'm not saying entertainment is bad. I'm just saying simply is that it can lead to a way of simply not taking things seriously. The desert is bleak. The prospect is awful. There's nothing to look forward to in a already fading afterglow. In other words, they've been to the highest part, so to speak, and now they've come back down to real earth, so to speak. But a great deal of effort and suffering with no guarantees of success. If this be freedom, then maybe one should think again. Such a reaction occurs because the ego, perceiving only in terms of its mundane experience, begins to reduce everything into a immediately situation. Thus, the waters in the midst of what appears to be desolation are indeed bitter when compared with the sweetness of the Nile and its fertile banks. And Moses cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which, when he cast into the waters, made the waters sweet. The implications of the symbolism is significant to the Kabbalist, who sees the tree as the analog of existence, whose root is in the world of imagination. Whose trunk is in creation, whose branches are in formation, and whose fruit is in action. Thus, grace extends downward to sustain and sweeten the lower levels of the universe. Such use of an analogy illustrates very precisely that the scribes who wove the esoteric teachings into the tribal saga knew exactly what they were about. This is further indicated by the following words or verses in the New English Bible translation. Quote, "It was there that the Lord laid down a precept and rule of life. There he put them to the test. He said, quote, if only you obey the Lord your God, if you do what is right in his eyes, if you will listen to his commands and keep all his statutes, then I will never bring upon you any of the sufferings which I brought on the Egyptians. For I, the Lord, am your healer." The above, that is from Exodus chapter 15, 25 to 26, clearly reveals the rules of the spiritual discipline. Obey the teaching, and many things that befall the uninitiated through innocence or ignorance will not occur. The sufferings that plague the animal soul will not afflict the seekers after truth, because the Lord will be their healer. This offers an extraordinary in the light of everyday experience, but it is borne out by many who have walked the spiritual path, by their center of attention being in the upper worlds. The saint and the sage are exempt from mundane stress and boredom. You see, upper world, come up to the upper worlds of your body. You see, that's part of your head. You see, think on these things. You see, even the beginner finds providence watches over him. The presence of esoteric teaching is further indicated in the next verse. Excuse me. When the Israelites came to a place called Elim, E-L-I-M, which means the place of trees, end quote. They found 12 springs and 70 palm trees encamped by them. Now, the 12, again, there's that, they're key numbers in the Bible. 3 is a major one, 7 is another one, 12 is one. And I'm thinking of the one that was 70. I can't think of one right off the top of my head here. But 12 springs and 70 palm trees encamped by them. According to tradition, each of the springs refreshed one of the 12 tribes. There it is, 12 tribes, or spiritual types of human beings. That would be what I would call types, probably be your astrological sign. I'm guessing there, I might be wrong. Each one of us is born in a different time period, has a plan before us when we come here. When we reincarnate, we have a plan that's before us. And what we've chosen was to go in a certain day, whatever, and we came from the spirit world to, quote unquote, to incarnate here again. The 70 trees refer to the original 70 souls that descended into Egypt. These became later the 70 elders of Israel, who guided the people under the direction of Moses and formed the inner council of wise ones within the people. Perceived in personal terms, the 70 are those parts of one's psyche that are sufficiently developed to have some concerted effect on the rest of the organism. Seen on the largest scale, they represent the inner spiritual level of humanity, or as the Jewish tradition calls them, the house of Israel. So I'm going to stop here and just make a point here. Most people are thinking of Israel as though this is how people have gotten so confused. People are thinking, okay, now the people are in their promised land, so they're thinking literally. So we go here back to 1948. Israel is created as a country. That's what people think is part of God's plan. Okay, and they see that in literal terms, but that's not what this is about. You see, the house of Israel would probably represent what takes place in your head again. You see, but this is how people are swayed. You see, In other traditions, they are known as the company of the blessed, the communion of saints, and the great brotherhood. From the place of instruction and refreshment at Elim, Elim, the Israelites moved on deeper into the desert until they came to the wilderness of Sin, which means the, quote, place of muddiness, end quote, of, quote, hateful passions, end quote. Or another quote here is rage. And, quote, another deal here, combat, end quote. So let's look at what the word Elim means here. I don't think he gives just says a refreshment. And I don't know if that's the meaning, but we'll look here, check it out. Yes, it is. And it says here, Hebrew, palm trees. This is based upon Exodus 15, verse 27. 12 wells. Okay, again, we talked about that, of truth, spiritual fullness. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots and when we didn't eat bread to the full. End quote. The suppressed anger of the lower psyche vents itself on the impulse which seems to have brought it out of an uncomfortable but secure life only to die an even more miserable death. I think this is true of all of us. We get used to certain things in our life, and we've been blessed in many ways, physically and spiritually. But this is going back. This is a telltale sign, basically, that are these people ready? Are these people ready to be the spiritual people of God? At this point, it doesn't look that way, but apparently God is working in their lives. In other words, hoping that they will see the benefit of what's going on. Fortunately, God understood the fears of the Israelite, and while Moses dealt with the panic, heaven prepared to alleviate the Israelites' hunger and teach them how to follow a simple instruction. The training for the time in the wilderness was about to begin. And I think that's the end of the chapter. Yes, it is. It's 15, chapter 15. So I know for my own self, as you're talking about 15 here, you get set in your ways. You get somewhat of what I call a comfortable life. And when things don't go the way you want them to go, what happens? I know what happens with me. I get angry. I want my way. You see, which is revealing simply is that I want my way. I'm in a way I'm spoiled. You see, because things are going pretty well, such and such, and then when something happens, my boat doesn't sail anymore. And we all are that way. I don't care who you are. We're all that way. Unless you take a perspective, move back from the being so close to the thing, and move back and see there is a plan in this, type of thing. So, but I don't want to go into the point simply is to dwell in the physical part here. This is what the preachers speak of all the time, and da 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 da. Well, like I just said, God has still blessed you. You have a place to stay. Your body, your house is still warm. Da 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 da. You have food on the table, such and such. And then so what do you? No, that's not. This is to do with something much deeper. This is to do with psychologically what's going on within your head. It's also to do with your spiritually. Are you willing to move on, so to speak? Try to, this is about you. It's not about the whole group of people. That is, I'm talking about, myself. You want to make heaven within you. You see, type of thing. Yes, there is a heaven out there. Yes. But in order to be there, you're going to go through a lot of things, and you want to make heaven within you already, so that when you pass away, you have found God, you see, which you will find God before that. You will know, you see, because Phil Langdon has had that experience. And as far as I know, there are others that have had it, but Phil is the only one who really actually goes into depth with it. So I would suggest that you, if anything you would do, is to just don't put your eyes on me. Phil Langdon knows what he's talking about because he's gone through it. He knows, he's been places, he understands, and you be thankful that he is a teacher for you. So I don't want to keep you guys here. That's chapter 15, and it's a short chapter. They're all short. They're to the point. And thank you for being here. May you have a good evening, and wish you the best. And we'll talk to you in the near future. Okay. Thank you. Take care. We'll see you next time.